It is February 12th, and the NHL trade deadline is coming out on March 7th. And I'm here with Oilers Nation managing editor Cam Lewis, and we are wearing the same sweaters today. Just a bit of a coinky-dinky, isn't it, Cam?
No,
we have
this is not a
style.
coincidence at all. We
No?
texted this morning, and he said he was going to be wearing his Jasper Bears sweater, so
Mm.
I immediately put on my Jasper Bears sweater.
And I said, make sure you wear your blue jeans because I don't want to be mistaken as the same person. But nevertheless, there's lots to talk about today besides our fashion sense, which is clearly of a high standard because we buy our stuff at nationgear.ca. The Edmonton Oilers, lots of trade rumors floating around there. And a big one that came out over the weekend was the rumor that the Oilers are very interested in Chicago Blackhawks forward Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato is 17th on Frank Saravalli's trade targets list. 19 goals on the season, 37 points. A career year for him, having a really good start there in Chicago in 53 games. Do you see him as a legit fit for the Edmonton Oilers?
I see Ryan Donato as a solid fit for the Oilers, but I'm not necessarily sure if it's something that the Chicago Blackhawks will do. Like, just to back up on Donato as a player this season, as we see on the screen, 19 goals and 37 points. Those are already career highs in both categories. And when you look at Ryan Donato, you might think at a glance, oh yeah, this guy's just killing it as the third line center, bottom six role or something in Chicago. But a lot of his success this season has come playing on the wing with Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
So what I wonder about Ryan Donato is the Blackhawks have already drafted a lot. They have a lot of picks. They have a good prospect pool, and they don't have very many financial commitments. So are you better off just keeping a guy like Donato, who's a veteran guy, maybe he's found some chemistry with your young superstar, and you need to get to the salary cap floor, just re-sign him to a new deal rather than sending him off to a team like Edmonton for a second round pick that's basically a third round pick? Like, I don't really see it for Chicago personally.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the one thing that does benefit the pick in a way too, the second round pick is the St. Louis Blues second round pick from the Dylan Holloway trade. So maybe a little bit better, but either way, like mid second round pick, what is that really going to do for you? Is it going to be better than what Ryan Donato could be? Certainly not next season. And just looking through the Chicago Blackhawks cap right now, obviously a team that's in a deep rebuild, to say the least. They struggled to find talent. I wonder if they would just give Ryan Donato like a similar to what they did for Nick Foligno.
Yeah.
Very different stages of their career, of course, but you all remember Nick Foligno and, of course, current Edmonton Oiler Corey Perry. Two guys who got $4 million plus deals. Ryan Donato, still only 28 years old. I like him as a fit for Edmonton. Louis DeBrusque was on Oilers Nation every day yesterday. It just said, like, this guy loves to shoot the puck, and you will not have to encourage him or go to after a shift, like tell him, like, hey, you probably should have shot. Like, the guy knows how to shoot, and he's not an elite goal scorer by any means. Pretty consistent, like 10 to 15 goal guy in the league, which is really good for him. But I think it could be a good fit. $2 million cap hit. We were talking about some comparisons to. I have an article coming out OilersNation.com tomorrow. Anthony Duclair is a good one from last year. Didn't have any salary retained when he moved from San Jose to Tampa Bay. Nino Niederreiter, another $1 million cap here a couple of years ago, and going to Winnipeg. They were all second round picks or a third round pick. And the other one too was Max Domi, when Chicago famously acquired Anton Hudobin. Real game changer for that organization. Dallas actually saved a little bit of money in that deal too, because Hudobin's cap hit was $3.3 million and Max Domi's was $3 million. So it saves about $300,000. If the Oilers wanted a bit of retention on there too, it probably only cost them a fourth round pick. Moving on to the second name that has been kind of thrown out there, not necessarily linked to Edmonton, but just a name that is come onto the scene over the weekend, reported first by, let me get this correct here.
It was Jacob Stoller.
Jacob Stoller from Sportsnet, formerly of Jets Nation as well, friend of the nation. Jared Mccann could become available from the Seattle Kraken. 14 goals this season, 42 points, 57 games, former first-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks, of course, as well. What do you make of him as a fit in Edmonton? I mean, if you're looking for a legit top six player, he's probably your guy.
Yeah, I think if fans last year in Edmonton weren't thrilled about Adam Henrique being the upgrade the team made ahead of the trade deadline, I don't think fans are going to be thrilled if it's Ryan Donato and maybe somebody else from Chicago. Nothing against those players, but if fans are looking for more of that Matthias Ekholm style trade where you're getting somebody signed for multiple years, someone who can play more of a prominent role, who can be a bit more of a game changer, I think Jared McCann's more down that alley. I don't know if this is the veteran addition Matthias Ekholm was, who completely changed the blue line when he arrived in Edmonton. Like, I'm not sure if McCann would show up here and suddenly become an elite second line center, but this is someone who's only 2 years removed from scoring 40 goals and 70 points for the Seattle Kraken. So signed to a pretty reasonable contract. I believe the cap hit is $5 million annually for 2 more seasons after this one. It's not an easy thing to work out salary cap wise, but if the Oilers can make it happen, then this is the sort of guy you want to go for. But it does take us back to what we just talked about with Chicago. Seattle's sort of in a weird spot. They've only been in the league for a few years. They went on that one playoff run and they've fallen off a cliff since. But trading a guy like this who's still in his late 20s for futures from the Oilers, a team that they don't really have, a deep prospect pool. Those draft picks aren't going to be towards the top. You just wonder if the Seattle Kraken are really getting better by making a deal like this.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a difficult one to pull off. Obviously, McCann has been with Seattle since the entire time their franchise has been existing. Led the team every single year that he's been there as well. And you're right, $5 million cap hit for Jared McCann.
So that's the franchise's all-time leading scorer, right?
Yeah, I guess you could label him
the
as
Kraken are going to move the franchise's all-time leading scorer 4 or 5 years into their existence for Edmonton scraps. I'd love to see it, but I mean, Nashville made that move with Ekholm, and it was shocking, but weirder things have happened.
Yeah, Winnipeg Jets were a team that were heavily linked with McCann as well. It does feel like more of a fit. They have a bit of a better prospect pool than the others do. I think of someone like Brad Lambert, for example, a really promising prospect that they have. But moving from the forward group to the crease, if you haven't heard, a lot of people want John Gibson as the Oilers' new number 1 starting goaltender. In 23 games this season, he has a .915 save percentage, 2.65 goals against average, only 9 wins in those 23 games, 9-9-2 record. Currently not on Frank Saravalli's trade targets board. We had Frank Saravalli on Oilers Nation every day today as well, and you can go back and watch that too. He met a couple of interesting points, one on Evander Kane as well, and what his future looks like for the remainder of the season with Edmonton and when we could potentially see him back. But he really downgraded the John Gibson rumors, if we want to call them that. I think it's more speculation from fans than anyone with any legitimacy.
Manifesting.
Yeah, it is. And I really don't think those people are going to get what they want when it comes to the trade deadline. And you would agree, I'm assuming?
I think I'm on the same page here. I do believe that if this could happen, then it would be good for the Oilers to acquire John Gibson. He's a veteran goalie who's having a nice rebound season here, playing less than he did in the past. Like, to back it up on Gibson, of course, 2nd round pick by Anaheim, came into the league, had 5 very strong seasons, and then 5 bad ones from 2019-20 to 2023-24. Save percentage during those 5 seasons of only .900, playing on a really bad Anaheim squad. And of course, he was the only goalie there, so he was playing a ton of games. And then this year, Lucas Dostal is the breakout goalie, and John Gibson's kind of become the 1B. And playing fewer games, his save percentage is up to .914. And the other thing that people talk about all the time that kind of shows how goalies are doing in relation to their team a little bit better than save percentage and goals against is goals saved above average, which looks at kind of how they do against shots from in close, that sort of thing. And he's got 8 goals saved above average, which is his first time being positive since 2017-18, when, of course, we all remember 2016-17 when he was excellent for the Ducks against the Oilers in the playoffs. I think that's the goalie people think they would be getting if they get John Gibson, but that was 23, 24-year-old John Gibson, and now this is 31, 32-year-old John Gibson. There is a risk here. He's signed for 2 more years after this one. Yeah, $6.4 million, and I don't think it's easy to get the Ducks to retain money on a contract for 2 more years after this one. You're going to be paying John Gibson, who was your franchise goalie, the goalie you kept around. They traded Freddie Anderson away to the Toronto Maple Leafs a few years ago, signed John Gibson long-term. I mean, this was a guy who they viewed as a franchise goalie. Are they going to pay him to play against him for a division opponent for the next 2 years after this? Are they going to do that? Like, it's one thing we talk about whether these are things the Oilers should do, but you think about it from the other team's perspective, and I don't know if the Ducks are in a rush to trade John Gibson to the Oilers for, I've said it already, but middling prospects, low draft picks. I don't know. The Oilers are in a difficult spot to make moves this year.
They are, especially for the big fish market, I guess we can call them. And you're right. Like, what does this do for Anaheim? They're a team who's wanting to come out of this rebuild at some point, and you imagine within the next 2 years They're going to want to push for a playoff spot. I think they're actually a pretty underrated team in the league. They're about 500.
They're not as bad as they have been.
No,
in the past few years.
definitely
They're,
not.
they look like they're on the way up.
I think they're 24-4-9, 24-24-9.
24-24-6 right now.
6, okay, yeah.
500 points percentage, which would be their first time above 500 in points percentage since 17-18, which was their last year in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I really do think they want to become a more competitive team. And hey, if they see a team like Seattle, who we just spoke about potentially selling off some pieces, like could be their chance to kind of overstep them in the divisional race, I guess we can call it, for a playoff spot too, as it goes on. Just looking here, just out of curiosity, the 2011, not to get too off track, the 2011 draft class for the Anaheim Ducks, Ricardo Kyle, John Gibson, William Carlson, who I actually didn't know was a Duck, traded in the Rene Bourque trade, of course.
I had no idea.
Famously. And Josh Manson in the 6th round. That was an excellent draft class.
They had years back in the early 2010s where it seemed every single season they'd draft outside of the first round a good D-man.
Well, even the year after, like, so they got Hampus Lindholm the next year at 6th overall, but then they got Freddie Anderson in the 3rd round, 87th. Year after that, got Shea Theodore late, and then Marcus Pedersen, Brandon Montour with their draft picks as well. Troy Terry, 5th round pick.
It's amazing how many of these D-men that they had and lost or got rid of or moved on from.
Cam Fowler really felt like the last one. He got moved on. But final topic we're going to discuss today. You wrote an article, Oilers Nation, earlier this week, just giving some grades on the players on the Oilers current roster, how they've done throughout the season. As obviously we're in the Four Nations break right now. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of what the criteria is? I'm safe to assume it's based off how they've been playing.
Yeah, it's pretty much, let's look at the entire course of the year thus far, how things have gone, and we basically have 3 ranges that we're talking about. The A range, A+, A minus. These players have been excellent or very good. The middle range is B, which you've been solid. B+ is good, B solid, B- is fine. And then anything in the C range is kind of mediocre. I wouldn't say bad or maybe needs improvement, but anything below the C range would be, that's ugly. Unfortunately, nobody,
thank goodness,
no one did. Though I didn't rank Derek Ryan on this because he was already waived.
Fair enough.
I didn't include him. He might have been in the
below C. Okay, so who was the hardest player for you to grade?
There was quite a few hard ones.
A lot of mediocrity.
There's a lot of players sort of in the middle of the pack, and there's also players who have been on the good side, close to excellent, but also have some deficiencies in their game. One player who inevitably is hard to talk about here, he's sort of a lightning rod, is Evan Bouchard. You look at his stats, and I mean, he should be right up there with Leon Draisaitl as one of the most valuable players in the team. He's 3rd in scoring with 44 points in 55 games. His even strength goal differential, 53-36, logging 23-37 a night. But of course, we've all seen Evan Bouchard with his frustrating gaffes. He had one against the Florida Panthers earlier this season in that Stanley Cup rematch. He had one against, I believe, the Vegas Golden Knights as well, Toronto Maple Leafs. So he's kind of in that category of when the games get tougher and faster and the opponents are, maybe more playoff atmosphere. Bouchard's had some gaffes, but I mean, overall, you look at the body of his work and his offense has been so good that hard not to give him an A-.
Yeah, it really is. And I think too, like, as important as, like, and obviously the tougher games are, the tougher opponents are the hardest games to play in, and those are the ones you want to build yourself up for the playoffs. Like, I think it is important to remember too that, like, mistake in the regular season, I don't think is the same as what what you're then going to go do in the playoffs. It's a much different style of game. But who out of the Oilers group do you think can make the biggest leap from when we inevitably do our end of season grades?
There's some players in the lower tier who definitely could wind up higher if they have a nice finish. One of those is Jeff Skinner, who's already on the way up. I gave him a C rating for the whole body of work, but he's kind of a player who could easily jump up into the B category given the way he's been playing lately. And one thing about Jeff Skinner, why I kind of wanted to cut him a little bit of slack on this, is it's a new team that he's playing for. Of course, he signs in free agency after being bought out by the Buffalo Sabres, but he's also had to really go through the gauntlet to earn the trust of this coaching staff. They really grinded him in the bottom 6 to improve his defensive game. And fairness to Jeff Skinner, he has come around. He's been much better defensively recently, and that's resulting in him getting top 6 minutes. So Jeff Skinner, if he continues playing with Leon Draisaitl, and I mean, given the way he's going, he should continue playing in that spot. I think he's someone who's going to kind of rocket up this list.
Quickly before we wrap, obviously the Four Nations face-off gets going tonight. Four Nations facing off. I don't know if you've heard. What are your expectations for Canada? I mean, obviously to win is the level that they want to get to, but how excited, I guess, are you for tonight's game? Are you going to be intrigued to watch?
Yeah, I'm interested to watch this tournament. Yeah. I mean, there hasn't been a real best on best, and this isn't a best on best because, you know, no Czech Republic, no Russia, no Leon Draisaitl from Germany, players from Switzerland. There's a handful of great players who aren't going to be involved. So it's a best-ish on best-ish. It's close, but this is the closest thing we've had since the World Cup in 2016, which was also sort of bullshit because it had Team Europe and the Millennial Team U21 thing. So really, it's been since 2015 or 2014 Sochi that there's been something legitimate with best on best international. So it's exciting for that reason. For Team Canada, I don't care quite so much about them winning this. It's more of this to me is like a practice trial ahead of the Olympics in 2026.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one to get incredibly excited for, but I would encourage people, like, you should want to watch this.
It's more interesting than the All-Star game. It's more interesting than a skills competition. People have been clamoring for international hockey for a long time, and it's never going to be perfect, but the NHL doing a mid-season international tournament is a step in the right direction.
100%, and just embrace it. The players actually wanted this, but you can read about it over at OilersNation.com right now. Tyler, who is at the Four Nations, actually chatted with Nathan McKinnon about some of the power play and the practices they've been doing, and obviously we'll keep you up to date with a bunch of other stuff as well. Surrounding the Edmonton Oilers, will John Gibson be an Oiler? Probably not. Will Ryan Donato? Potentially. We'll let you know. See you later.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.